we're having, of being able to hear some of the stories and memories of the childhood of the elders of our community, and being able to just share that with everybody. This began a couple of months ago when I wanted, I had the desire to meet the elders myself. I didn't quite know how to do it. So in my way, I got a grant from the Greenfield Foundation that supported this, and I could start calling people on the phone and introducing myself. And I've had these delightful months being able to be invited into people's homes and hearing the stories and the memories of their childhood. And this is a real delight and a privilege for me to be able to just share the culmination of all of these stories. Tonight will be in 3 parts. The first part will be the sharing of about 5 minutes each of the elders that I've interviewed and be able to introduce themselves. And the second part will be a 35-minute video that I made with Gordon Pearl and his love of performance and writing. What we did was we scripted out. Instead of just sharing the stories of his childhood, wrote out a script that we have crafted into a movie for everybody. So we'll see that. And then the third part is just as important to me as the first 2. Because that's the opportunity for questions and to have a conversation. And for me, again, what I love about this is this opportunity of just for all of us to maybe know each other a little bit more. I really cherish the friendships that have begun for me through this project. And delighted to be able to share this with everybody tonight. So thank you all for coming. And the whole evening is dedicated, in the program, to Henrietta Becker, who I was able to interview her in the last weeks of her life. And as I wrote, she was the elder's elder, 97 years old. And so what I have is part of this is a multimedia experience tonight. And so the first part is I've taken just 6 minutes from my conversation with Henrietta. And I put it on this CD. And so have that as she shares about her puppy who came to America when she was 70. And as well as a little bit about what Shabbos was like for her growing up. So we'll begin with that.
Yiddishkeit and Jewish things are concerned. I only learned Yiddish when my puppy, my grandmother, came to this country and was stuck in World War I. World War I. Back there in the early 1900s, and she couldn't go back to Europe where she had come from because everything was disrupted on account of World War I. So my Bobby became my closest, bosomy, wonderful Bobby that I confided everything in because I was number 3 gal in my family. And a number 3 person has one of those situations where they're not the big ones, they're not the little ones, they're sort of in between, and that was me. And so my Bobby became my confidant, my best friend. She was everything to me, and that's why I think I would like to be the same kind of a Bobby for my grandchildren if I can. Because I have a wonderful example always in my mind. She was a big bosomy lady, typically European, of course, but very bright. She studied English, and she had to be in her 70s when she came here. She learned how to speak English here. She learned how to read an American newspaper here. She told us what books to get out of the library for her here. She adjusted remarkably well to this country, and she didn't even come here until she was in her 70s. So this is my quite remarkable grandmother. And I wish I could be a grandmother like that, but, backgrounds are different. Everything is so different.
She came on vacation to visit?
she was my bed companion. And that's why, of course, you know, if I had anything that I wanted to ask, I would ask her. My mother was a very busy woman. She had a family of 6 kids. I was number 3 of 6. And so she had a lot to do. She was learning to be a citizen of the United States. So my Bobby from Copacabana was a big part of my background because I admired her tremendously. She was a very strong woman, a very self-reliant woman. And if she thought someone should be coming to this country, she spared no effort. She got everybody in the whole... I sometimes think in all of Lithuania, but the whole of Copacabana, she got them to contribute to a fund so that they could get this other person here. I mean, she moved mountains.
Marvelous.
And she wasn't, you know, she couldn't read or write the language. And she spoke Yiddish most of the time, so that's where I learned whatever Yiddish I know. It was from that Bobby.
How old were you when she came to visit?
Yeah, I must have been, I was still preschool. So I must have been quite young, 5, 6 years old. I remember they took me to South Station to meet her when she was coming from New York to Boston. And so they'd been practicing me on Yiddish right along. So I went to her and I said, Bobby, ich will a stickel breiten Putter. In the middle of South Station.
And what does that mean? Yeah.
Oh, it meant, I knew what it meant. I want a piece of bread and butter. But I didn't know what else to say to her. That's the only conversation I had. I used what was available.
What you knew.
I used what was available. The words I knew.
Were there blessings at the Shabbos table and candle lighting?
Yeah, the whole 9 yards.
There was, yes.
The whole 9 yards. It started with candle lighting.
And your mother lit the candles, do you remember?
Yes, oh yes, religiously.
Yeah.
And I do mean religiously. I think she felt very close to her religion at that point.
Yes.
I can't say she always did, but she did at that point. And Friday nights were Friday night. The menu was always exactly the same. Gefilte fish.
Yes.
And chicken soup. And chicken. You knew exactly. It was predictable. And that's what they wanted. They needed that predictability. No, I don't think religion, they had a very strange attitude about their religion, as from my point of view, because they assumed it was there. It was like having, as some guy said, oh yeah, but I still like chicken on Friday night. It was there, and it was a fact of life, and they did all the Shabbostika things, but it didn't take a good part of their thinking because they had so many other things to adjust to.
Sure.
And so they were doing what they thought was the important things.
And it represents over 500 years of living. This is great. This is such a beautiful sight. Thank you all for share. And that was one of the real delights with this whole project, of every time sitting down, of never knowing where it would lead to. And it was so diverse. One thing that I really received from this whole project is realizing that what does it mean to be Jewish? It's different for everybody. It is so very different for everybody. And here it's represented, right here, in a little record class.
Well, my name is Mary Cotton, and I must tell you, it was a shock when I saw our elders, and I was one of the elders, because I came here as a bride 56 years ago, and suddenly I'm an elder. And I grew up in Malden, and it's about 10 miles north of Boston. And as I started to say before, this was an important time of the year for our family, getting ready for Pesach. And before I continue, I have to tell David how thrilled I am that he undertook this project, because it brought back memories that I hadn't thought about in a long, long time. So it was a wonderful experience, and thank you so much. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it, and suddenly when he left, I was very tearful. And I thought, oh, if I could still have some of the Pesach I had as a child and the sayers, and I hope that my children remember some of the things that they learned. And my mother lived with us for about 4 years, so they had some wonderful memories of voting and the sayers, and I hope they continue that way. And it's been a real thrill. Thank you, David.
Well, my little story is a little bit negative, but it's what was happening at that time. My mother was a very, very devout woman, and she believed in charity. We had more little pushkas in our house than Carter has little girls. And I don't know if everybody knows what a pushka is. It's a little box with a slit and it just puts money in. There was a group in New York City of, I don't know what they were, whether they were rabbis or assistants or what, but they came to New London by train, New London, Connecticut, periodically, and walked around to all the houses to empty the pushkas. So one day they arrived at my house. I was in high school at the time, and I had a stepmother who had come into our home very recently, and her outlook on life was very different than my mother's. So I went and got the pushka the man wanted, and he looked at it and he was shocked. And he went into a great tirade of words. Your mother, we could always depend on her. I said, my mother died. We could always depend on this house having money for us. I said, I'm sorry. And he went on and on and on. Well, I had received my allowance that day. This was during the real pinch years. My allowance for a week as a child in high school was $1.50, and I had to stretch it very, very thin. But he made such a racket, I went and got my allowance and gave it to him. And so he still was yelling when he got out of there. He still was carrying on. And so that's not quite the end of the story. This is the part that changed my life. My stepmother came home, and I told her, I knew I had a halo over my head. I gave away my $1.50, and I told her all about it. And I stood there, waiting. She said, are you waiting for something? And I said, yes. Could you give me my allowance again? She said, no, dear, I don't have it. She said, if you chose to give it away, that was your choice, and it was nice of you, but no, I'm not giving you another $1.50. That's the end of my story.
A reminder, I'll start with the name. Lillian Smith. And what was the town you grew up in?
New London, Connecticut. Incidentally, can I just throw this in? My brother-in-law lives in California now, and he comes from New London, Connecticut. He called me this afternoon. He said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "I'm all right. Why?" He said, "I just got the papers from New London, and a Lillian Smith died. And I'm sure that you were still here." I'm Arlene Cohn, and I grew up in Northampton. You see, I didn't get very far. But my mother was the religious one in the family, and she used to take me and my brother, who was 2 years younger, to Brookline to visit my grandmother frequently, and we always went to services at Temple Israel. It was a Reformed temple, everything was in English, and I loved it. They had a wonderful rabbi. Years later, I told somebody that I used to go to that temple, and he said, "You mean the Jewish church?" So that was the opinion in those days. While growing up in Northampton, there was one synagogue, and it was ultra-Orthodox. The women sat upstairs, the men downstairs, and if we ever did go to services, the men talked constantly and argued and made a lot of noise. It didn't matter. But I did go to Sunday school, mostly to see this boy that I liked. And I went to his bar mitzvah, and I was so impressed because, and he told me later, because I did marry him, that his mother sent him to Hader just once because he came home and told her that the rabbi had hit his knuckles with a ruler. She said, "Well, you're not going to have anybody hitting you." So she got a student over at Massachusetts Agricultural College in those days to come and tutor him and get him through his bar mitzvah. While I was growing up, there were about 50 families Jewish families in Northampton. And you made your friends in the neighborhoods that you lived. So in order to be accurate, I got out my high school yearbook, and I counted how many were in the class, 210. How many Jewish boys? 6. How many Jewish girls? 6. So I had a lot of friends, and I don't remember much anti-Semitism. But there was one special party that I wasn't invited to, and found out later, and all my other friends were, and found out later that the father involved was a real anti-Semite. Where was I? Anyway, when I went to college, one of my aims was to meet some Jewish girls. And I did, and I made friends there. And one of those girls became my sister-in-law. Mission accomplished. She's still a good friend. But I still have friends that weren't Jewish from 4th grade on. Two are really left now that I keep in touch with constantly. That's about it.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Gluck-Sosas. I was born in Borough Park, Brooklyn, New York. You too? Which was a real Jewish-Italian neighborhood. And, so I knew I was Jewish from the time I was little. And I'm a very curious kind of person. My family, my mother and father, were secular Jews. They were American. My mother was born here. My father was born in Romania and came here when he was 12 with his brothers and sisters. I knew only one grandparent, my mother's father. He lived with us until he died I think at age 65, when I was 6 years old. So I think I'm now re-exploring my Jewish roots, which aren't very deep, and I really appreciate the atmosphere here in Temple Israel, and particularly Ephraim and David's friendliness. I mean, David approached me to interview me as an elder, and I go, I don't know what you want me for. I mean, I'm not even practicing Judaism. But I'm eclectic. I'm really eclectic. And when I was little, young, I wanted to be able to walk into any place, any church, any mosque, and feel at home. I really deeply wanted to feel at home in the world, anywhere that I went. And I think it's because I really felt that we're all the same. And it disturbed me that there were lots of anti-whatever, anti-black, anti-Jewish, anti-this, anti-that. And I just wanted to live in a world of peace, where everybody loved each other. So it's been a struggle. And I have become a Buddhist, an ethical culturist, a Unitarian, and I'm Jewish to begin with. And when I realized, I took the Musar group with Ephraim last year. And, I was uncomfortable because, first of all, I didn't know if I was welcome because I really practiced Judaism. And he was so open and welcoming. And I realized, taking the Musar group, that it's just like Buddhism. It's just like any religion. I mean, the highest form of behavior and ethics and education and studying mystic aspects of life and scientific aspects, everything. I mean, there's so much similarity, and I felt really comfortable taking it. And I got up in the Unitarian Church one day a few months ago, and I said, I have a joy, and my joy is that I've discovered that I have a Jewish soul. So despite the fact that I don't know much about the nitty-gritty aspect, I somehow developed, and I think it had to do with my grandfather who lived with us, as I said. He was a 32nd degree Mason. And I didn't know what it was because nobody ever talked in my family about anything. And I don't know. But I'm now investigating the Masonic teachings. And the Masonic lodges have had ups and downs because they do have some secret proceedings which people were suspicious of.
That's the third degree. The 33rd degree.
What?
The things that are not available to everybody.
Okay. So he was a 32nd degree Mason. And that was his religion. And my uncles belonged too. And that's what they kind of practice. And their ethics are very high. The Masonic groups believe in doing good in the world. They say that the founding fathers, many of them of the country, were Masons, and they used the signs of the universe, the latitude and longitude, and to understand where the sacred places were, and decided where New York and Detroit and Washington and the major cities of the country were going to be. And my grandfather, I was 6 when he died, but I remember him sitting at the dining room table with all his books and studying. And I was not allowed to talk to him when he was doing that. I mean, that was sacred. He was a very serious person, very high-minded, I think, stable, and I must have learned a lot from him. The other part I wanted to just talk about was, the fact was that my best friend lived next door, and my other friend lived across the street, and another one lived down in the next block. All were practicing Jewish families. And these were my best friends. And Selma lived next door to me. And I don't know how old I was, but at a pretty young age, I was invited to their Seder's every year for about 20 years. And then when she got married, I was invited to her Seder's every year. So I got a lot out of going to that. I loved the Seder's, and I loved going through the whole book. But what happened was, when she was a child, and I was at her Seder, the practice then was the children were allowed to stop after it was time to eat. But the adults, especially the men, went on to the end of the service. They didn't stop until they were finished. But when she was married and they had Seders, we went to the eating part and didn't go any further than that. So things were changing. And things are changing now. And it's a very exciting time. I know David. David knows I can talk forever. So I just want to say that we're living in a very changing world, and everybody's changing. And hopefully what we're going to move into is a world where we realize that we are all one, we're all connected. All the differences are different aspects of how we see the universe and God, and we're just all connected. And we need to learn to love each other and think for each other.
I'll just say a little bit right now.
I'm Martin Pearl, and it's a pleasure to be sitting up here with all my elder street friends. Frankly, I think that seniors would have been a better word. I graduated high school. Anyway, when David asked me if I would say a few words, way back, that was 3 months ago, it ended up with a video. And it was fun making, and I and as we reversed it, it went on and on. David realized that we had some material here, maybe we could make a video right there. Okay. And so we finished the project, and we made a video, and then he told me, he said, you will be appearing on a DVD. Not me. I can't put my clothes. I'm not going. Put some clothes on you.
A hard act to follow. I'm Eleanor Crandall, and I moved here less than a year ago from the center of Manhattan. But I grew up in an unincorporated hamlet in Sullivan County named Parksville. I grew up in a very Jewish, very close family, in a basically Jewish community. My parents had met each other as children there, and married on my father's 18th birthday. My connection to Judaism is very strongly based on my father and what my father meant, what kind of person my father was. It was a small community. I went to a 2-room schoolhouse, and then went to a high school that was where I was bused. But we had a synagogue in Parksville that was a very old world kind of synagogue with
the women sitting upstairs and the men downstairs, and during the summer, from Memorial Day to the Jewish holidays, there usually was a minyan every week, and often every morning. But during the winter, it was very hard to get a minyan together. And the women essentially did not go to shul except on the holidays. So, and being a girl, there was no Hebrew school. So my Jewish education was limited to what came from my home, which was, as I said, a very strongly Jewish home. My father was one of 6 children. His family was traditional, but not really very religious. My father was a religious man to the core of his being, and my father became the president of the synagogue when he was 25 years old. He remained the president of the synagogue for, like, nobody wanted to take over all the sorts, and for like 50 years. When my mother and father went to high school, they went to the same high schools that I did. It was like 4 miles away, and there were no buses then. There was a milk train that went through, and the milk train went through at 6 o'clock in the morning. So either they went at 6 o'clock in the morning and waited around, or they walked. One of the stories about my father is that he very early on was felt very religious and traditional, and he would have his little sandwich. And this Liberty, which was the town the high school was in, was at that time quite anti-Semitic, and he was not allowed to wear a yarmulke in the lunchroom. So he would take his lunch up to the roof in all kinds of weather and put on his yarmulke and have lunch there. And it was, I would imagine, I don't know how he felt, but later on he became president of the Board of Education of the high school. Well, I don't say it's a rule, but it must have felt very good for him. He was also president of the board of the Hebrew Day School in Sullivan County. He ran the funds for UJA. He was very active in many of the Jewish organizations, but he was also very active in many other community activities. He was a lawyer who never turned anybody away from his office, whether or not they could afford anything. And I discovered one time a story that I would never have known if my mother hadn't told me. My mother was ill, and she was in her last year of life. And I was visiting one weekend to sort of face my father. My sister and I took turns visiting, and there was this big bouquet of flowers. And I asked my mother where they came from. So she told me this story. She said that a priest came to see my father, and he asked my father to draw him up a will. And my father did that, and then the priest said, "And what do I owe you?" And my father said, "Look, you're a man of the cloth. There won't be any charge." And the priest was sort of taken aback, and my father said, "But if you wish to, what you can do is you can pay for a mass for someone who can't afford it." And the priest sent my mother these flowers. about the concept of a coupling, which many of you probably know what is. But in Parksville, it was a resort area for summer resort. The summers in New York were very hot. There was no air conditioning. I think it was better, but no air conditioning. Air conditioning. And families used to come up, the women and children, to what we called a coupling, which would be like a central boarding house, where they would have their own room, and they would share a communal kitchen and have like a shelf in a refrigerator and 2 burners on a stove, and the husbands would come up on Friday and go back to the city on Sunday. And there were any number of couplings in this little town. There were also big hotels, like Grossinger's was 4 miles away, other big hotels. I think that's as much time as I should probably take.
I am deaf. My daughter says, why did you wear your hearing aid? I said, there's nothing worth hearing. Because I don't know when to throw my voice out or bring it back. You wouldn't, I wouldn't know because I can't conceive of it. So David's going to read my speech, if I may. David?
Yes, I may. Can I read it just like this? Am I on? You're on for everybody? Okay. This is what Evelyn wrote to share with all of you. I never took it upon myself to make any particular observance, although I was very proud of my heritage. But the day arrived when our oldest son, Gary, was ready to begin his formal education. I was unable to take him to school because it was important to attend to our younger son, Alan, who was mentally retarded. I always had to wait until outside help arrived to be able to be with him. My husband left the house too early to take Gary to class. When I left for work, upon the entrance of assistants with Alan, my employer, who was Orthodox, in response to my problem, suggested that we enter Gary in the yeshiva. And they would pick him up, and they would bring him home. And so we wouldn't have to fret. And we took up on that idea, thinking it would be only temporary. However, at the end of the year, Alan went into an institution. And at this time, we asked Gary if he wanted to transfer to public school. We explained that it would be no hardship because of the changed circumstances. But he chose to stay in yeshiva. This decision, of course, had an impact on our lifestyle, but with no regrets. So to make a long story short, today Alan is in a beautiful home with 5 other gentlemen in West Bloomfield, Michigan, which I lived in my junior high and high school. Almost 30 of such homes are sponsored by the Jewish Association for Retarded Citizens, which is an organization in which Ben and myself, Evelyn, became deeply involved from the start. And Gary, he married a lovely young lady 37 years ago and is teaching in Chicago, as well as being executive director in Illinois of a worldwide religious organization, Agudat Israel. He and Arfa have 6 children and 26 grandchildren. 30 seconds is coming?
Yes.
Just
Wendy has 5, and the rest is on my gallery.
32 total. And for anyone who might be interested, I have a copy here of an interview that Gary had with the Jewish newspaper, which you will find informative and humorous, as I did. And Ben is gone for 17 years now, but there is no doubt in my mind that he too would have been proud of our sons and our daughter, Wendy G. As you can see, Evelyn also have some photos and things that perhaps afterwards, there's going to be tea and coffee, and there's bacons from Merlin's downstairs that we can share, to be able to share these things. And I have 2 more parts for tonight. So now we have Gordon's interview that turned into this video.
Can't tmescià la signorina aux yeux noirs, come la luna e della sua faccia qui éclaire le boulevard, come la luna e della sua faccia qui éclaire le boulevard.
Welcome everybody to Temple Israel's Elders Speak program. Thank you for joining us today as our special guest.
It's my pleasure. But wait, whoa, 1 second. What's with this elders? What? Just because I look like one? No. But I want to thank you, David. I'm very proud and honored to be one of your first guests on the new David Arfa show, which I understand, according to TV Guide, is going to be airing 7 nights a week opposite Larry King live. And while I'm at it, I want to thank the entire Arfa production group for going to no great expense to bring me here this evening.
Well, thank you, Gordon. It was nothing.
That's right, it was nothing.
How about we begin with just sharing who you are?
All right, I'm Gordon Bertram Oy Pearl. The Oy is for Bertram. And if you want to bring it up under names, we can talk about it later. Okay.
All right, well, how about we start with your early years?
You really want to know?
Well, maybe our viewers would like to know.
Okay, for our viewers, I'll start with my parents.
Okay, great.
Just
Go
like,
ahead, it's all
just
yours.
like the movie, When Harry Met Sally, you remember the movie? Well, in my case, it was When Louis Met Sadie. And Louis was at the induction center in Air Mass, waiting to be inducted. He was from Hartford. And Sadie was from Worcester, visiting some friends. So you might say, when Hartford met Worcester, or when Ma Pearl met Papa Lou, as my son Howard would name them some 35 years later. Shortly after they met, Louis was shipped out to the cavalry in San Antonio, Texas. And it was probably the first time he ever saw a horse wasn't pulling a wagon. And Sadie went back to Worcester, living with her folks. Well, after the discharge, when Louis was discharged in 1918, they were married in Worcester and then moved down to Hartford into the first floor of a 3-tenement flat in the north end of Hartford. And in due time, back to Worcester on May 12th, 1921, to deliver me. I was what you might call a baby boomer from World War I yet. Got it?
I got it. Sounds good. What do you remember from your early years?
You know, I thought you'd never ask. Well, to tell you the truth, I remember not much about my first 2 years. I'm pretty foggy about that. But after that, I seemed to absorb everything. Okay? And one day, I could hear then. I could hear the second floor neighbor walking down the stairs, and the back door, the kitchen door, happened to be open. So I opened the door. The door was open, so I stick my head out, and I yell, "Mama, here comes your crazy lady." And boy, did Mama Jack jerk me back into the house, and did I ever get scolded. Terrible. And needless to say, Mama and second floor had very little to talk about after that episode. Wow. And I never got to meet Celia Horowitz either, who was the neighbor. Okay.
Well, please keep going with your tale of 2 cities.
Of course. I have very fond memories as I experienced my first 7 years on the first floor of the north end of Hartford. For example, in September 1924, I remember the day that they brought my sister Phyllis home from the Hartford Hospital where she was born, and we had a gala welcoming. I also remember that I could perceive a certain awareness of my turf invasion, to be honest with you. Okay.
Things were changing.
Yes, right.
How about you remember much about your Jewish upbringing?
Oh, I certainly do. I can remember my mother calling the butcher market on a Sunday morning to place her order for the week. I think it went something like this. Hello, Kaplan. Sadie Pearl. Yeah, right. How's your tongue? Okay. I'll take it pickled. All right, that's fine. And your liver? Okay. Send me a few nice slices of the calf's liver for a change. That'll be nice. And also, how much is your hamburger? 49 cents a pound? So much? Well, send me 3 pounds. And by the way, Kaplan, last week on your bill, what was that extra charge for? Was that for delivery? Oh, it wasn't to deliver. It was for the liver. Okay, I got it now. And send me some flanken too. Okay, yeah. Speaking of flanken, that reminds me of Lyndon Johnson was president of the United States. One weekend he was attending a convention at Grossinger's in the Catskills. So he's in the dining room in the evening trying to get something to eat. So he calls the waiter over and he says, "Waiter, I think I'll try some of that there flanken."
That's great. But Gordon, what's Lyndon Johnson have to do with your kosher Orthodox beginnings?
Actually, nothing, David. It's just my crazy word association. Forgive me.
Well, how about what do you remember about your grandparents?
Grandparents were called Bubby and Zadie. I never referred to them as anything else. They were my grandparents. I had 2 wonderful grandparents in Hartford and 2 in Worcester. Now, I'll start with my Hartford grandparents because I saw more of them than the Worcester ones, but I was very fond of all of them. My Hartford grandparents were Harris and Ida Pearl, and they lived in the south end of Hartford, where most of the early settlers resided. And my grandfather, Harris, was a cobbler, a shoemaker. And my grandmother was everything. She was everything, but the main thing that she did was to raise 5 children beautifully, and including Papa Lou, her eldest, which is, of course, my dad. And she could mimic anybody, believe me, anybody. And I can just recall one thing about her when her husband was a cobbler, shoemaker, and she would imitate him talking to a customer with nails in his mouth. Can you believe that? It was funny.
I wish I could hear that.
Yeah. Now, my prime time kosher Orthodox came from my Worcester Bubby and Zadie, okay? And I can remember walking to shul with Grandpa David Oronsky, Zadie David Oronsky, my dad, and we were going down to the shul for a service, the Providence Street Shul. I wonder if it's still there, I don't know. Anyway, we went into the sanctuary, and there were the Zadies, the men, sitting downstairs, and upstairs were the Bubbies. Hear the Zadies saying their prayers, making eyes at the Bubbies upstairs. Tomorrow night, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And, after that, that was the opening of the getting into the shul. Right.
And what do you remember about the synagogue?
Shul.
Or the shul. I stand corrected.
That's all right.
The Providence Street Shul.
Providence Street Shul. What do I remember?
Yeah.
Lenin.
Lenin?
Lenin. Lenin was reading the Torah, and the Torah was read, of course, each week. And the ceremony was conducted on a bima, and the bima was downstairs. Actually, if I think back about it, it looked like a boxing ring without the ropes. But anyway, the reading of the Torah, the Leinin, was conducted by the rabbi, assisted by the cantor, which we call the chazan, And then there were two old-time flunkies there who today, I think in our show, we call them gobbies. And then there was another individual on the beam also. And I'm sure he was the president of the show. And he was the gentleman who started the opening of the laying-in service, and which was, he auctioned off the Elias, the honors. See, that's what he did. And went something like this, as I recall. Ein Taler, $1, Ukamishi. A hand pops up from somewhere, and he's got this $1. Zwei Taler, Ukamishi, $2. And there's a young man over the young man. He says 80, but a young man who responds with $2. Then for the third time, Drei Taler, Ukamishi. No response at all. He looks around twice. Rosinski, du hast jetzt gekauft das zweite Allee für $2. Mazel tov.
All right. An interesting idea. So your shul used the opportunity to read from the Torah as a fundraiser. Very interesting idea. Maybe we could start auctioning off aliyahs at Temple Israel?
Come on.
I guess not. I suppose we would need at least a minion of 10 adults for that to happen, huh?
Yeah.
What would happen after services for you? Do you remember?
Well, after services, walk back to 12 Woodford Street, where we were greeted by my Worcester Bubby, Bessie Aronsky, my mama, who you already know, and my two aunts, Aunt Lillian and Aunt Rose. After the greeting, it was followed by schnapps, wine for the kiddush, and then Bubby Aronsky's fabulous, strictly kosher cuisine, and featuring cholent potatoes. Now, I always loved potatoes, mashed potatoes, but I gotta tell you, her cholent potatoes were like heaven on a platter. Yeah, I remember that clearly.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
And sounds like you had a memorable Yiddishkeit connection, even from way back. Are there any other stories you might tell us?
Well, I wanted to be a rabbi.
Is that right? Really?
Emes.
Well, what happened?
I figured I'd be so busy studying for the rabbinate that there'd be no time to take out girls.
You're kidding, right?
Who's kidding? No kidding. It was a serious problem. It changed my whole career.
Seriously, Gordon, what really stands out of those first 7 years on the North End?
Well, it's a tough question, David, but I'll answer it both subjectively and objectively, but I'll give you my overview on it. Okay. At about the age of 5, self-awareness had definitely settled in, accompanied by mild anxiety and a strong parental dependence. Other than that, I was in great shape. But I do remember I loved to play with my buddies, my kids, my friends, and that I enjoyed very much. As a matter of fact, Dad used to call me Gordon and his Garden Street gang. No further elaboration.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gordon. More with Gordon Pearl after this commercial break where we can pay our bills. Please tune in again tomorrow night, where our special guest will be Madonna, and we'll explore her new love affair with Hebrew letters. Be back shortly.
Great.
Welcome back, everyone. You didn't think we'd have a real intermission, did you? And risk losing you? No, for those who are just joining in, I'm chatting tonight with one of the elders from Temple Israel who's sharing his traditional and spiritual recollections of growing up. So please, tell us more, Gordon.
Gordy.
Gordy?
Gordy. New name, new settings, new friends, new names. Okay? No more Gershela, which is my Jewish name, and my Worcester grandparents would always refer to me as Gershela. But still, Buddy, courtesy of my dad, courtesy of World War I, my buddy. Nights are long since you went away. I dream about you all through the day. My buddy, your buddy misses you. And after that, I was called Buddy, and it was nonstop. It was picked up by the entire string of pearls, aunts, uncles, cousins, and even today, my brother Bennett calls me Bud. Linda's husband, my daughter Linda's husband, Bob Sidorsky, knowing how much I disliked the name Bertram, even though it's a middle name, I disliked it. He did me a big favor. He cut me some slack. Now he calls me Bert. Oi.
Well, so much for name callings.
Yeah.
How about we go into any more recollections to share?
Roger, I'm sorry, as you were. Roger was my control tower speak during World War II.
No problem. Keep going, Gordy.
Okay. Well, thanks, David. Well, in 1928, I was 7 years old, and we moved to a single-family, two-story home on 387 Cornwall Street, only some 2.5 miles from our old North End. Now I entered new residential and environmental surroundings in our new North End of Hartford. Trees, gardens, clean sidewalks, even older kids playing touch football on the street.
Sounds wonderful and utopian.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Well, I entered the second grade that September in the Holcomb Street Elementary School. That's kindergarten through 8th grade. And then on to Northwest Junior High, North End Junior High, and graduated from Weaver High in the class of 1939 before I started my college, education.
And what do you remember about your Hebrew schooling?
Well, to tell you the truth, never really went to Hebrew school, or Cheder as it was called. We still did not belong to a shul. It was the Depression years, and Dad had to work for the End of Life on Shabbat, half a day only. And so but later on, he joined the Agudas Sachem Orthodox Shul. But let me add one thing. Not only did he join the Orthodox Shul, he became one of the frumest Jews, most religious I have ever known.
So I'm wondering, did you have a bar mitzvah?
Good question. Yes, indeed. Less than 1/4 mile from my house, the Hebrew Children's Orphanage Home, Hebrew School Sanctuary, Morris Perkle, the Hebrew instructor. Now, this wasn't an orphanage home in the true sense of the word. It was during the Depression years, and some Jewish parents who could not afford to provide for their children in the way that they desired had this facility to turn to during the Depression years. And they were wonderful kids. They went to the same public school that I did, and I got to know practically all of them and still know some of them today. Okay, so Mr. Perkle, Morris Perkle, was the Hebrew teacher. And he also freelanced his abilities and skills to the neighborhood as a freelance teacher. So my mother heard about that. She engaged him, and she also spoke to the parents of 3 other of my friends, and we all started Hebrew 101 from Mr. Perkle. He'd come to the house a couple of times a week, maybe once a week, I don't remember exactly. But anyway, I was 11 at that time when I started Hebrew 101.
And how did your bar mitzvah go?
It went perfect. It went perfect. I did it all. The aliyahs, the Torah reading with the trup, the Torah, the whole Torah, and then half Torah, and then mafter and speech. I say I did it all. And needless to say, the String of Pearls and the Aronsky family and Morris Perkle were all proud, and I guess I was too. And you know what? I think I got about 29 fountain pens, but one pair of long pants. And that was my first pair of long pants, and believe me, I wore those after the bar mitzvah at the reception.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I received a lot of fountain pens too for my bar mitzvah.
It was the vogue. It was a thing in those days.
Uh-huh.
But you're younger than I am.
It still continues.
Okay.
So it sounds like was your bar mitzvah, would you consider that your first performance?
Pretty much, but not really, except in the 6th grade, when my mother went to the 6th grade teacher and told her what a beautiful singing voice I have. I had a couple of gigs after that in school.
Is that right?
Yeah. And later on, I remember also, I won a Major Bowes Talent Scout thing that was going on. I don't even remember what I did.
How about you have more Jewish recollection?
Fine, I'll just skip around here. Hey, I remember when I could skip around too, you know. But, and see what we come up with.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Go ahead.
Well, here goes. My sister Phyllis took elocution lessons from a Sylvia Shirley Gladstein. In those days, it was probably the vogue for Jewish kids to go to elocution class, both boys and girls. And what they did, they recited and they danced and they did all these things, you know, that elocution, dramatic arts, if you will, and they performed in all of it. Well, they were planning in this particular year to do their Snow White musical review. And it was to feature, one of the features of that was to have big-time talent represented, you know, from the movies, from the radio, from Broadway. For example, like Bing Crosby, Rudy Valley, Burns and Allen, Sophie Tucker. Well, when I heard about this, I became more than mildly interested in it. And I got my sister, and I believe my mother too, to get me an audition with Sylvia Shirley Gladstein, which happened. And I wanted to do Eddie Cantor, but she suggested that my voice was more suited to Al Jolson. So I did Al Jolson, black face, red lips, white gloves, and I did 3 Jolson numbers.
Do you remember any of them?
How did it go? It went something like this. I'd walk 1,000,000 miles for one of your smiles, my mammy. Climb upon my knee, sonny boy, though you're only 3. Sonny boy, there's no way of knowing, I've no way of showing what you mean to me, sonny boy. When April showers may come your way, they bring the flowers that bloom in May. So keep on looking for a bluebird and listening for his song. Whenever April showers comes along. I knew I should have left that third number on.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
How do you remember those in this whole play?
Now you've asked a question. Glad you asked that. This was the Snow White review. Okay. It just so happened that in this show, Snow White was played by a young gal named Rhoda Weber. Well, we were married August 12th, 1945. We were married in the Emmanuel Synagogue in Hartford, it was officiated by Rabbi Morris Silverman, who we all know so well from his conservative prayer books.
Yeah, the Rabbi Silverman.
The Rabbi Silverman, yes, very well-known, prominent man. And we were both in the service that time. Rhoda was in the Waves, Navy, and I was in the Air Force. June 24th, 1948, our son Howard was born at the Hartford Hospital, becoming our first contribution to the new baby boomer generation. April 11th, 1951, Linda Robin Pearl enters the world from the Mount Sinai Hospital, which is located today, and it was then, at the same spot that the Hebrew home was located during the Depression years. The same thing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in 1953, we moved to our first home in Newington, Connecticut. And what we encountered there was beautiful. Young marrieds with kids, wonderful. Made many lifelong friends that we've kept over the years. And Rhoda and I became founders of the Congregation B'nai Shalom Synagogue. B'nai Shalom, this past fall, celebrated our 50th golden anniversary, in which they were also going to honor, and they did, the founding members of the show. Yeah. And I didn't go. I still can't dance. So, but anyway, that's not meant to be funny. But I remember a couple of things about B'nai Shalom that I do want to mention here. I was president of the show on 2 different occasions. And I was on the search committee. We hired Rabbi Herbert Silberman, who became our rabbi, and Rabbi Silberman and his wife Tema and their 3 children became lifelong friends of ours. Well, let's talk about the 60s. Boomers, Beatles, here come the 60s. Okay. Gordon B. Pearl incorporated his advertising and marketing communications firm in Bloomfield. Moved to 24 Proctor Drive in 1965, I believe it was. And in the 60s, both Howard and Linda graduated from the Conard High School in West Hartford.
And then come the 70s and 80s. Exactly. What memories do you have from that time period?
Well, besides re-electing Nixon's Watergate, the String of Pearls debuted its new family get-together meetings. Family pearls for the whole string of pearls, aunts, uncles, cousins, and it would be held one Sunday evening in somebody's home, and it was, as I say, it was attended by the entire string of pearls. And Jason, attorney Jason Pearl.
Yes.
And he was an attorney, and he conducted the meetings with gavel, something like this. This meeting will now come to order. Aunt Sophie, you're out of order. The chair now recognizes the man in the brown suit. And Dad stands up, my dad stands up and says, "You oughta, you damn fool, he's your Uncle Eddie." It was fun.
That sounds great. That sounds great. Gordy, it's clear that you have a wonderful sense of humor. And I'm wondering, when I first called you to participate in sharing some of your memories, you said, "What memories do I have? I don't know what you'd like to hear. I have some jokes for you, some humorous stories. How about that?" And you shared a few of them right on the phone on the very first day. And I'm wondering if you would care to share those tonight.
Well, I'll try a few for you if you wish.
Before you share these stories, Gordy, what I'd like to do is just introduce them to everybody, because I've heard them already once, and just to say that these stories, the humor of these stories is based on humor of exaggeration, and the context for sharing these stories are these are stories told by Jews for other Jews, and with that said, if you would share the stories, please, for us all.
Well, I'll start with Cohen and Levy. They meet on the street one day, and Cohen goes over to Levy, and he says, "Hey, Abe, I heard you had a fire in your store the other night." "Shh, tonight." We now take you to Madison Square Garden, New York, where the big bout of the evening is about to start between Mike Kelly of New York and Jake Goldberg of the Bronx. The contestants are evenly matched. Kelly weighing 135, Goldberg 211. Round 1, touch glove, sparring around the center of the ring. Kelly leads with a left and lands a massive haymaker to Goldberg's jaw. Goldberg is down. Round 2.
Kelly moves briskly to the attack and belts Goldberg with a barrage of short left, right jabs. It's pathetic. There's the bell. He's saved by the bell. Again. And so he tries to follow Kelly back to he's dazed. He tries to follow Kelly back to his corner. Meanwhile, his trainer, Abe Waxman, comes out and draws him back to his own corner and tries to comfort him with cold towels and words of encouragement. Jake, he didn't lay a glove on you. He's not. You're doing fine. He didn't lay a glove on you. So Goldberg says, well, you better keep an eye on the referee. Somebody's knocking the shit out of me. Round 3-4. Goldberg is down. The winner, Goldberg. The judges, Shemansky, Shapiro, and Rosenberg. Now, one day, on Brooklyn, I think it was, Abe Katz is walking down the street, and he spots this jewelry store window. So he remembers it's his wife's birthday coming up. So he goes into the store, and the proprietor of the store happens to be wearing a yarmulke, skull cap. So Abe says, I'd like to see some of your diamond rings that you have in the window. He says, you're in the wrong place, Abe. He says, the proprietor says, I'm a moil. Well, so Abe says, well, what would you expect me to put in the window?
Wonderful.
Okay, the 90s, let's see. Pum and Pummel, that's Rhoda and myself, names that she officially gave to us and always called me Pum, and she was Pummel. And, well, we officially retired in the early 90s. And we started to relax a little bit and enjoy our friends and our vacations and things like that. And most of all, we enjoyed our grandchildren up in Shelburne Falls, Tivan and Misha Sidorsky. I called for an estimate from the movers to move up to Greenfield. I remember the mover saying to me, where are you going, sir? I said, I'm going up north to Greenfield. He says, you're not going south to Florida? I said, no, not this time. And so in May of '96, we moved up to Greenfield, and shortly thereafter, very shortly thereafter, we joined Temple Israel and met some very lovely people. No question about that. And I think it was in early 98, that I happened to be talking to some folks at the Temple about shows that I used to do for around in my earlier days. And they said, we never had a show up here. So I met the challenge, and we produced There's No Business Like Show Business, and many of the stars from that show are here this evening, and they can attest to that fact that it was not a bad show. As a matter of fact, it was so good that after we completed the show, we immediately got a 6-week engagement in the garage on Chapman Street.
Wonderful.
And then in May 20th, 1999, my beloved Rhoda passed away at Franklin Medical Center. And thanks to my wonderful family and my many friends, I'm still hanging in. There's a prayer that I have always been very fond of ever since I've been in Temple Israel, and I think it's no secret to some of the folks that I love this prayer. And so I'd like to close by reciting it for you. Okay?
Oh, yes.
It's called For What Do I Pray? For what do I pray? For health, for happiness, for wealth, for fame? Who can say what will befall me? I do what I do in pursuit of what I desire, but only the hunt is mine. The victory is in other hands. I pray for nothing, for I am nothing. My desires are not yours, my needs are not yours, perhaps not even mine. so I pray simply to stand in your presence. I pray simply to stand and be present to you and what you bring this moment and this moment again. All there is you. Time and eternity, self and other, all you. So I pray to pray. I pray to be aware of the being that is all and nothing, here and there, now and forever.
Shalom Aleichem, señores, el Dios esté en sus ayudas, no hirezcan sus valores, si habló palabras crudas, de ver el mundo falso, me se pierde el sentido. Quería fuir descalzo por las montañas pedridas.
Thank you. Such a delight to be able to share this with everybody. It's been such a pleasure. I'd like to ask, can someone put the lights on in the back, please? I'd love to take just a few minutes for this last piece to ask any questions of the elders from anybody. And everyone, again, there is such rich material and memories that were shared. I'm so delighted, again, to have this get-together, to share a little taste of, from everybody. And everybody just, Derek, I'm wondering, fill student in people's seats. Yeah.
I have a question for Gordon. You talked about auctioning alleles, and I can't picture how that worked on Shabbat. Did they actually, was this weekday?
They gave money. They gave money.
Oh, they just said, okay. All right. Answers that.
First, I just want to make a comment. I noticed how many of you all spoke about how important your grandparents were in your lives and what an important role they played. And I just want to speak just having gotten to know those of you who had grandchildren who were at Temple Israel, and some of you, or some of the grandchildren are here today, that I know that your grandchildren think of you in equally as special people. And I think that it's been wonderful for us to have you in this community, as well as for them to have you as grandparents. And I guess I wanted to ask you, what would you say is the biggest difference in your own, in your life growing up as Jewish, and your grandchildren who have, grown up Jewish? What are the differences? What would you say is the most, similar, or maybe what's been the most different kind of thing in your Jewish lives? Just curious.
Do you in particular want to jump into that?
My grandchildren are more exposed to their not just their Hebrew background, because they go to Hebrew day school, but the American background that we didn't have necessarily.
It was a very Jewish neighborhood. You had your whole neighborhood was mention, should everyone have nicknames in your community? And do you remember when you shared some of those? Yeah.
Except I never knew some of my relatives, their real names. They were always, some of them weren't so very nice at names. But for a long time, there was a lady whose name was Rose, and she was the border. And they used to call her Rose the Border. And I didn't know that was her name. I just thought that was her name.
Anyways, I'd love to share. I also interviewed Dick and Barbara Graff, who are in Florida right now, so they were able to join us tonight. And they had also wonderful stories. Dick grew up here in Greenfield, and Barbara grew up in Northampton. And so Dick has stories of Hebrew school coming right here in the 30s. And there was one teacher, thankfully short-lived, who carried a broken pool stick with them. And he would grab knuckles, if he got out of line, and several kids would try and, do their best to get out of class, just on purpose, so they wouldn't have to suffer with this teacher. And he also said he would get paid to come to shul. Some of the business community would pay him. And he would earn money if he would just come to shul. He loved that, so he loved coming to shul, be able to get money. And he also said is that the business community here in Greenfield, a lot of the small businesses are on Main Street, where it was the Jewish immigrants who began. And he said there was a whole community of folks that would also start up new businesses. It was a cooperative. And they would give money to anyone who wanted to start up a business. But then at some point in the late 30s, there was now one but two businesses folded right in a row. And that was the end of that that business venture that they all had. And he also shared about the great delight when they would get clothes in New York for the store. They always come back and they would fill up the car and go to the deli, with all the breads and the meats, and just bring it on back, and how it would save the whole family. They would stock up the freezer and just feast on New York deli. It was like a biggest treat to do that. I wonder if others have Hebrew school memories that I would share. It seems that many people had stories about Hebrew school. Several horrible stories, and several good stories as well. Would anyone care to share a little bit about your Hebrew school? Yes, great.
We had a teacher who was a very aggressive person. I can't remember why, but he kept me after school one day. I was probably in 4th grade, 5th grade, something like that. And I lived about a mile from Hebrew school. We were expected to walk back and forth, but keeping me over, everybody I walked with went, and it was dark out, and I got pretty upset. And I didn't know why I was there, so finally I stood up, and he yelled at me. It was very aggressive, very awful. So I came up, and he was between me and getting out, so I kicked him in the shins.
When they say you weren't an aggressive child, which...
No, I wasn't. I got aggressive later.
Well, a suggestion maybe at this point we shift downstairs where there's coffee and there's tea.
אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא להינשא לחפצוקו אדוני מלך שמו נברא אדון העולם ואחרי ככלות הכל